Hello, this is Ziemowit about history, and today I will tell you about the causes and the consequences of a civil war in Spain in 20th century. And beyond me you can see ruined church. A lot of churches were burned during this war because the left side of the conflict wanted to kill all the priests and burn all the churches because they hated Christianity, especially Christian hierarchs which were allied with General Franco. But let's start from the beginning, from the 19th century Spain, when it was a falling colonial empire. They have big internal struggle between monarchists and liberals who wanted reforms, who wanted to make Spain some kind of modern state, but this conservative right side was also very important, and in 19th century Spain had 3 civil wars, so you can imagine how warm the conflict was. And finally in year 1898 Spain lost war against United States, and they lost all their colonies in both Americas. So you can imagine that in the beginning of the 20th century Spain was very weak, very poor, with very primitive agriculture, with very few modern industries, without great colonies, and only having some territories in today Morocco and Western Sahara. So they were very upset, of course, and also their king Alfonso XIII was a weak ruler with very low authority. So in year 1923 first revolt started. General Miguel Primo de Rivera took power, and he was ruling for 7 years, and after his reign this government collapsed and people proclaimed the Second Spanish Republic. The Second Republic was an attempt to make Spain a modern country with a lot of liberal propositions, with a lot of liberal changes. Here what was proposed in the constitution from year 1931.
Separation of church and state. The constitution introduced the secular nation of the state, eliminating the influence of Catholic Church on public life. The educational activities of religious orders were banned, and Jesuits were dissolved, and cemeteries were secularized. The Senate, which was the stronghold of aristocracy, was abolished, giving legislative power exclusively to Cortes. Voting rights were extended to citizens of both sexes over 23 years old, which meant that now women were granted active and passive voting rights. In Christian Spain, secular marriages and possibilities of divorce were introduced. The far-reaching autonomy of Catalonia and the Basques were recognized.
Spain, in the beginning of this Second Republic, was very different from other European states at this time. Most of all, a lot of farmers without any education, they cannot even write or read. Women get voting rights just now, so they were included to the democratic power in some case. But on the other side, there were great aristocrats who took a lot of land, and people working on their very big farms were like slaves almost. So this stratification, economical stratification of this state was very, very big, and this led to very big upset. Also, strategic resources in Spain were in the hands of other countries. For example, telecommunication was in hands of French and American companies, and energetic companies like power plants and electric wires were in hands of British and Belgian companies. So Spain was not very bad situation at the beginning of the Second Republic, and internal struggle were even worse because there were 17 parties that were in Spanish parliament. There were a lot of right-wing parties and a lot of left-wing parties, with communist parties, anarchist parties, socialist parties, radical communist, not radical communist, radical right, not radical right, a lot of different parties with different programs. And this struggle for power was very often not only verbal, but also by force. And for example, first attempt to crush Second Republic was in year 1932, when there was a civil uprising, and dictator was trying to take the power, but he was crushed. And then for another years there were very hot political struggle among Spanish people. And just listen what happened in the beginning of 1936.
In February, the elections were won by the centrist Popular Front, which resulted in increase in attacks by both sides, the right-wing Falanga and the left-wing anarchists. Bomb attacks on politicians' offices, street assaults, and often murders were common. Spain was in frenzy. The country sank into greater and greater anarchy, and violence became the norm of political life. Finally, on July 12, 1936, an important representative of the socialists, José Castillo, was killed in Madrid. Socialistic government replied to this murder.
Assassination of José Calvo Sotelo. He was a leader of right-wing opposition, and he was assassinated by state forces. It was not a crime made by some crazy political opponents, but state organs did this assassination, and this was too much. They made a plot, and generals and officers made rebellion against the Republican government. First, they rebelled in Morocco when they have major forces, and then they rebelled on the Iberian Peninsula, and so in July this war started. In the beginning, very important move was that Republic was able to secure enormous amount of gold from the Spanish bank, because they had 800 tons of gold in their reserve. It was one of the biggest reserves in the world at this time, and they were able to secure it, and it was very important for the future of this internal struggle, because without this money they would be not able to fight for a long time. And now the war begins. Spain is split at half. The western part is mainly right-wing, conservative, pro-Catholic, pro-Franco, and the eastern side is communist, socialist, Republican part. So the war begins, and the Republic has a lot of support internationally. They have a lot of volunteers from all over the world. They have a lot of volunteers from France, from socialists, from Germany, from Hungary, from Poland, from United Kingdom, even from Mexico, Brazil, and other countries. And of course, the main supporter for the republic was Russia. Russia under Stalin, that he sent immediately few thousand people to lead the situation in Spain and to establish Russian terror among Republican forces, because Stalin wanted to keep hand on this and be sure that if Republic will win, Spain will be allied to Russia and Spain will be communistic country. So he sent his political officers who were shooting to people that were not pure communist as Stalin wanted. They were shooting, of course, to Republican side of the war. And also Franco has significant support. He gets support from mainly Italy and Germany. From Italy he gets a lot of ships, a lot of rifles and ammunitions, and 100,000 soldiers. It was very important for his troops. But from Germany he get even more. He get a lot of soldiers, a lot of tanks, a lot of know-how, because German generals in Spain were trying their new strategies for war, and it was very important factor in Franco's army. And the most important was Luftwaffe. Messerschmitts and Junkers and other planes sent to Spain were crucial in crushing forces of the Republic, because they were very technologically sophisticated and were dominating the skies over Spain during this civil war. But this whole help wasn't for free. Every bullet, every plane, every tank, every cannon and every rifle was counted, and in the process Franco left this war with very big debt to Germany and to Italy. And during the Second World War he had to pay them a lot, mainly in natural resources. So as Spain was neutral during Second World War, it was drained from its resource because they had to pay this big debt. And on the other side, as I tell you, the Republic had this enormous amount of gold, and most of the gold was confiscated by Russians and sent to Russia, so the Stalin could finance this brother help for Spain. To Russia they sent over 500 tons of gold, and the rest was paid for other help, because France, England was selling, not giving weapons for the Republic. Also Poland was selling some weapons to Spanish Republic, but Poland also sell some rifles to Franco as well, but most Polish help went to the Republic side. At the beginning of this war, the help of German aircrafts was crucial to transfer thousands of Spanish soldiers from Morocco in order to quickly occupy territory in Andalusia, before the Republic could even form its professional army. This operation was successful, and in August much of the territory in south was taken over by Franco's troops. Later, there were several attacks on Madrid, but the Spanish capital was not captured despite very fierce fighting. Then the nationalist troops moved north toward very well industrialized Asturias, cut off from the rest of the Republic. It fell within a few months. Finally, in the spring of 1938, the key offensive of the war began, in the north toward Barcelona. After a powerful bombardment by the Luftwaffe, Franco's army launched a great offensive. And after a few years of war, they get out of the money, so this brotherhood help started to end because no money, no help, just like in business. And I think this was one of the main reasons why the Republic failed in this war. Also, second reason was very strong air forces brought by Germany, and this sky domination was very crucial for this war. What was the outcome of the civil war in Spain? The most important outcome was that Spain lost like 500,000 people. Most of them were civilians, and the rest were soldiers on both sides. Another 500,000 people escaped, emigrated from Spain because they were feared about their lives, they were feared about repressions made by the new Franco's government. And they also remain divided by the civil war. Divided even today, they remember who was standing on which side of the civil war. They remember it through generations. There are people living very close together in small communities, and they remember very well today, in year 2025, 50 years after the death of Francis Franco and the end of the Franco totalitarian Spain and the rise of the Third Republic. 50 years later, the memory of the civil war is still very strong, and it's present in the Spain nowadays. And the very important, very sad also outcome of this war was that Germany trained their troops in Spain, and then few months later they sent these troops to conquer Poland in September 1939, and so the Second World War started. Thank you very much for your attention. This was Ziemowit about history. Let me know in the comments how do you liked my story about the civil war in Spain. And from sunny Spain in winter, I say you goodbye.